does fiscal policy at the Cato Institute. He joins us now on the line from Washington. Dan, let's talk about the sequester. First of all, let's talk about what it actually means. How do you explain it to the average Canadian?
What the sequester does is it cuts 1.2% of overall government spending for fiscal 2013, which of course still means government spending is growing compared to 2012. I don't know, maybe this makes me the Darth Vader of fiscal policy, but I think the sequester is a tiny, tiny step in the right direction because under both Bush and Obama, government spending has been exploding and imposing a greater and greater burden on the economy's productive sector. We need to copy Canada in the 1990s and actually, put a hard freeze on government spending to get our fiscal policy back under control.
Well, look, you might think it's the way to go, but the truth seems to be that it's going to have a terrible effect on Canadians, on Americans, first of all, who don't make a lot of money, who would obviously survive on the paycheck or need the paycheck. So how soon are those average Americans going to feel this as far as job cuts or pay cuts, that kind of thing?
Well, since federal workers make on average twice the level of total compensation as people in the productive sector of the economy, if they wind up having to get a fingernail clipping on their paycheck, that would be a very positive step because they're getting overcompensated and it's totally unnecessary. Now, in terms of people in the real economy, how would they get affected? We're already seeing different bureaucracies and agencies and programs going out of their way to try to make the sequester seem as inconvenient and scary as possible. So, for instance, the TSA, instead of cutting down on some of the fat cat consultant contracts, instead of cutting back on the number of bureaucrats who go to these expensive conferences, they very well may furlough some frontline workers and try to create longer lines at airports solely as a strategy and a tactic to try to get more money out of the already overburdened taxpayers in America.
Well, how specific are these cuts? Do they have the freedom to do that, decide where they want to save the money, or is that decided for them?
There is some flexibility. Again, we're talking about $88 billion of budget authority, but that only translates into $44 billion of budget outlays, which is just 1.2% of total spending. Now, some programs like Social Security and Medicaid are exempt. So the programs that do get hit with the sequester, you are talking in some cases about bringing spending back to 2010 levels. Now, we didn't have airplanes falling out of the skies in 2010. We didn't have poisoned meat being sold in supermarkets in 2010. So some of this hysterical hyperbole of the world coming to an end, it almost makes me want to laugh, except I want to cry because America is becoming Greece under both Republicans and Democrats spending too much money. So we are going to see some inconvenience because the bureaucracies that are affected don't have complete flexibility in how to allocate this tiny bit of spending restraint that's being imposed upon them. But the House of Representatives already twice has passed legislation to rearrange the sequester to give the agencies more flexibility, but the Senate hasn't even done a budget in 4 years, much less a sequester flexibility act. And the president, just like some of these bureaucracies, seems to want to make it as harsh as possible in hopes of getting another tax increase.
Well, let's talk about the military for a second, because they are apparently going to get 50% of the cuts. They could be hit the hardest. Would you say they're in the same situation? They can cut that much fat?
Well, just as with the domestic programs, the military is going out of its way to make it seem like the world's coming to an end. We actually had one admiral saying that we couldn't fuel an aircraft carrier. Well, again, just like with other parts of the government, there is lots of waste and fat and fraud and abuse and corruption in the Pentagon, and that's what they should be focusing on. Even if we have the sequester, and you're right, I mean, the defense budget is disproportionately impacted. They're 20% of the budget, and they have to take 50% of the sequester. But even under the sequester, the Pentagon budget grows over the next 10 years, and we already have 46% of the world's military spending is accounted for by the U.S., and another 25% is by U.S. allies. So I don't think we're about to see the North Koreans land on the Pacific shore.
All right, Dan Mitchell, I'd love to continue the conversation, but we are out of time. Thank you very much.